Welcome back, Troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have a 2005 Gibson Les Paul Standard Faded. Hey, wait a minute, did I just review one of these back in December? Yes, but at that time I forgot to mention the fact that there's both 50s and 60s necks versions out there. So this is a 60s neck, my last one is a 50s. These videos will be pretty similar. Actually, I suggest just checking that other one out because that thing is a masterpiece. The Breathing Guitar Mark II. Okay, so what on earth is this thing? The Standard Faded was essentially a cheaper way to offer the Les Paul Standard when it was first introduced in 2005. However, what they accidentally did was create a cult following of these guitars that was kind of led on by a guy named Larry Corsa who would take these and modify these. And that's because he and many other people said these sounded better because they don't have that thick gloss finish over them. They don't have the pore fillers. It's just a nice thin satin finish. It allows the guitar to breathe. It allows it to resonate better. And while, yes, there is some truth behind that in the way that the guitar will feel, once you sit down in the recording studio and really just start hammering out on these guitars, it doesn't make as much of a difference as you would think. But feel-wise and the way this thing resonates in your hands, yes, I won't lie, there is a difference between a satin and a gloss finish. Just because a satin finish is cheaper to produce, that doesn't necessarily mean it's any worse than a gloss. However, the one thing a gloss finish has over satin is gloss, it's gonna stay glossy for the most part. Satin is very hard to keep in satin format. Now this one, unlike that other one, is actually still with a satin finish, because as you play these things, your arms rub against them and it naturally buffs and polishes them out into a more semi-gloss finish. So if you own a faded Les Paul, you can actually take a polishing cloth and just go to town and turn it into the gloss finish. You're just a couple man hours away from the full deal. These were produced from 2005 until 2009. The first year is the most desirable because they had 9-hole weight relief versus chambering. Some of the early 2006s also fall within that 9-hole weight relief category. Now, is there anything wrong with a chambered Les Paul Standard? I've never been really lucky with finding a chambered USA Standard that sounded good. But then again, I've only had one, so that doesn't mean too much. But as far as like my chambered custom shop reissues I've had, and my Les Paul Elegance, I like those guys. So it's just one of those things you try before you buy. So let's go ahead, throw this one on the workbench and take a look at its original parts, because this one is a lot more original than the last. Inside this Standard Faded, we can see the original pickups are the Burstbucker 1 and 2. You can tell because it says number 1 right there, and that tells you it's an Alnico 5 pickup, and then the number 2. The bridge pickup reads 7.96 k ohms, and the neck position is ohming at 7.44. In the neck pickup cavity, we have the markings HS, probably something like Heritage Sunburst, I'm not really sure about that one. And the bridge pickup LP6F. Now this can kind of get confusing when you're trying to determine what model you have. So LP, obviously Les Paul, 6 stands for 60s neck. There's also the 5 version, which sometimes just looks like an S, so some people just think it's Les Paul Standard. No, that's Les Paul 50s neck. But then you can also find something like an F, which in this case stands for faded, but some people might mistake that for a T, or a plus, which means a plus top. So this one is a standard faded with a 60s neck. The bridge on this one is your standard Nashville Tune-o-matic. You can see the PW right there. And I do want to point out, this bridge feels like it's collapsed a little bit. Like not a lot. Like not to the point where you can't use it, but it doesn't feel like it has the arch they normally do. The tailpiece on this one, I'm pretty convinced this has been replaced. This is lightweight aluminum, so it's likely an upgrade, though I could be wrong. The knobs on this model are the gold bonnet style. and we have a beautifully flamed maple top here. Some of these standard fadeds, they really don't have that nice of tops, and the finishing can be varying. This one's kind of got like a tangerine burst going on. It's not quite a very deep red. It might not be my favorite burst in the world, but it kind of makes up for it because you have this beautiful top on it. You can see this one at one point in time did have a pickguard installed on it. However, it has been removed and I do not have it. Again, we have the solid mahogany body. And then moving on to the fretboard, this is still rosewood. I just polished up these frets and conditioned the fretboard. Everything is good to go here. I really didn't see any wear to these frets. I mean, maybe a little bit in like the cowboy cord areas, but I'm digging all of the wood grain in this rosewood. And if you catch it in the light just right, there's even a little bit of flame figuring in it. So that's a nice little touch. We have the typical 24 3/4 inch scale, a 1.69 inch nut width, which increases to 2.08 inches by the 12th. Neck depth at first fret, 0.81 inches, and it stays really thin, 0.87 by the 12th. So if you like pencil thin necks, I mean, this is like SG territory on this guy. That's definitely one of the thinnest necks I've felt on a Les Paul. The truss rod cover itself is just blank. And here you can see everything's looking good with the truss rod. Your threads are just slightly past the center. And you have that faded satin finish along the headstock too. I almost kind of wish they would have went full gloss here. But you can see the Les Paul model silkscreen. You have your typical tooling marks around the Gibson logo. And we've got some edge wear on this example with the Clusen tuners. On the back side of the instrument, with the control plates removed, we can see we have hand-wired pots in here. They just read Gibson on each one. You've got these little ceramic disc capacitors. Nothing too interesting going on here. Same thing with the toggle switch cavity. These do feature the thin binding in the cutaway, which is a 50 spec. That's why it looks like a different color right here, because that's the red stain over top of the maple cap. The strap buttons are your regular style. And we'll take a quick look at the back of the neck here. Back of the headstock, you can see the Gibson Clusen Deluxe tuners, made in USA stamp, and this style of serial number. This particular example weighs 8 pounds, 9.9 ounces. Though to be perfectly honest, it feels a lot heavier than that because the weight is in the body. Now that we know what the insides of this instrument look like, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. How this instrument sounds, let's go ahead and review its condition. Alright, so this guitar is in good condition. I'm sure most dealers would list this as very good, or sometimes even excellent, but it's just good in my book. You've got a lot of light edge wear around this headstock, but nothing that's really gonna be detrimental to the way it looks, but it's definitely not perfect. You have the typical lines around the Gibson logo. That's just how they do them. You'll find that on every single one. The blank truss rod cover is stock, but the nut has been replaced. It's a very tidy replacement job, and you don't see any like finish marring or anything. Rosewood fretboard is in great shape. I just cleaned and polished that, as well as the frets, and we just put a fresh set of 10 Diodarios on here. I actually imported this one back from Japan, and usually the Japanese market seems to get like really choice examples. And as far as these faded tops go, they normally don't have a lot of figuring to them. So finding one with such a nicely evenly matched top with tons of flame is pretty nice. And if you dig the whole tangerine burst thing, this is definitely going to be right what you're wanting. But you can see there are some light nicks and dings along this top, as well as some impression marks mainly around here. And you might miss it, but this knob is actually replaced. But the only really telltale sign is that the numbers aren't white, whereas they are on this one, and it's a little bit more of a darker gold color. The pole pieces do show some very light rust. You could clean that off with a little bit of lemon oil. So as far as the top goes, you just kind of have some impressions in this area and light nicks and dings. Back of the headstock, serial number 00685540. You can see there's some small dings along the top here. I mean, this thing was definitely played, but well taken care of. The neck is very thin on this. If you love super pencil thin necks, you're gonna like this one. Personally, it's a little bit too thin for my tastes. The back of the instrument maintains a fairly clean appearance, but once you get towards the bottom here, you can see those impression marks, and especially the ones in this area. We'll take a look around the side here. It's almost like the stain didn't catch in this area, but you do have some very light impressions here. That's the screw hole from the pickguard that used to be on here. I do not have that though. Here's a ding right there. And you still have your original strap buttons on here. So overall, I mean, if you can live with some light nicks and dings and impression marks, you know, if you're gonna play this thing anyways, this is like that perfect condition. It's not overly worn, but yet it's still broken in that you won't mourn the first ding. Under Blacklight, you can see it's glowing the way you would want to see. The whole combination of the faded finish and the glowing, it just reminds me of like laser tag. It's got like that fluorescent paint going on. Here you can see how that knob's non-original. It doesn't glow a lot more, but it definitely glows a little bit more than the original ones. Base of the headstock is also glowing, and there's no breaks, cracks, or repairs to the headstock. Back of the neck is also looking good, and the body is looking the way I'd want to see. So if you're wondering why the neck finish glows a little bit more, it's because some sweat has absorbed into it. But at the same time, it does still feel satin-like. It's not quite been glossed out, but you can tell it's a little bit more glossier than the rest of the instrument. This instrument comes in a Gibson USA hardshell case. You've got that black reptile-like exterior. All latches are present and functioning. You've got two down here, a back one, and one here, as well as an unset combo lock, so you can set that to whatever you want. The condition's actually pretty darn good. You've got a few light scuffs and little tears to the Tolex, but definitely maintains a clean appearance. The interior is a dark charcoal color. The lid ribbon is still attached. You do not have the headstock wedge. It's the double neck rest version with the heel support. Inside the case compartment, you do have the original knob. It's just cracked and it doesn't stay on very well. And the original silica packet's in there too. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this 2005 60s neck faded standard, feel free to check out that link in the description that will take you to the Reverb for Sale page. Thank you Troglodytes for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.